Okay. Santa Claus is coming back.
Right, well, welcome back to part 2 of episode 74 of the Malt Travel podcast. It's still just the two of us, and I'm going to just, I've lost us off the screen, so let me find my floating video so I can see people. So we're still without Bruce. We've had no word from him, so we don't know where he is. So in part 1, we were just doing a quick catch-up, a bit of beery news, but in part 2, we're going to tell you about our little trip to Leeds and to the home of Faith, Northern Monk, which, again, I don't know, we've been a bit... We've talked about Northern Monk a few times. They're obviously a very well known. I think we heard that they particularly decided to go down a supermarket route so that they can sell their beers through the whole of the UK, and you can find their beers in certainly Asda's and Morrison's of this world. I've been to Asda today, and they had their beers in. Faith is their kind of hazy pale, which I guess is almost like the Doom Bar of craft beer. I would haste to say. I wouldn't say their beer is my first choice. It's good. They do quite a range of it, Nick. I'm guessing most of it's not really down your neck of the woods. They do a traditional bitter. They do
No,
some
I think that's yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, I made the comment to the guy who was leading the tour that I made the point that I don't tend to see their beers in many of the bars that I go in. And he was sort of like faint surprised at that. And then I asked a question about Witherspoon's as well, and he like held a bloody crucifix up me as though I was the Antichrist. But I'm thinking about it. I think Northern Monk have always that bit of attitude. They're a bit more hipster and a bit more trendy. And to be honest with you, let's be honest, we go in the old men's pubs, don't we?
Yeah.
So we go in the traditional cask pubs, whereas Northern Monk don't want to be seen on the bar or what you could say wet-led traditional pubs. They want to be on the micro bars and the hipster pubs that there are plenty in Leeds and even when you go into York. And I suppose that's where their business is. You know, they want to sit alongside Camden Lager and all these sort of people that people drink Camden Lager, think it's the best thing in the world, but it's brewed by you, Budweiser, Budvar, or wherever else now, you know, and all these sort of things. So I'm wondering that's why we don't see a lot of Northern Monk, except the weird and wonderful flavors that they produce when, like you say, they're in the supermarkets and they jump off the shelf. I mean, there's a lot of vape companies got criticised for putting the packaging and branding, you know, sweet flavors and things like that as almost it was marketed to the kids. I'm surprised that Northern Monk have never been picked up on that, because when they were doing their rhubarb and custard and all that sort of stuff, you know, the packaging and everything, I would say was certainly to appeal to a much, much younger audience, or people who are a bit naive in terms of real ale, who were more like, you know, I don't think people really revisit the youth, as it were.
I don't think people really want to drink prawn cocktail flavored lager, but anyway, there we go. So yeah, I mean, you know, you never see their beers down in Staffordshire. I say,
there's enough young people want to drink Guinness, and Guinness is the worst thing in the bloody world.
The only thing you'd see is in Morrison's or Asda. So anyway, we went there. Yeah, I think you know, they talk about their ethics. It's a very similar story to Brew York. It was set up by two guys in Bradford, brewing in a cellar. And then they had in the kind of 2013, 2012, they managed to get, I think they won an award, or they got a £5,000 grant from somewhere, and they came across an old flax store in Holgate, Leeds, which they kind of looked at and you know, thought, why not brew here? Why build a brewery when you can use what I guess was an empty building? So flax is a plant which
is great, yeah.
For what cotton did to Manchester, flax did for Leeds. It was used in linen production, particularly in the 1800s, and Leeds for a while was the centre of the universe for flax and churning that out. So there's quite a lot of legacy. And if you go into this part of Leeds, it's a little bit of a hidden bit in it, really, Nick. It's kind of a tucked away bit of Leeds. I guess the ring road and stuff was kind of cut off a little bit, but it's some fantastic buildings. I mean, we came across Temple Mill, didn't we? we came across Temple Mill, which was based on an Egyptian palace. And unfortunately, it's all. I mean, I think it looks like there's something going on in it, but it's all scaffolded up and stuff all over it. But it was. I think I might have a picture of it later on.
Tim Mark needs to get in there. He'll sort it out.
So this Christmas present was a brewery trip with a beer tasting. And I, to be honest, thinking about it, having done a few brewery trips, it was different. There's not a lot to see in the brewery, let's be honest. It's a fairly small, and in fact, most of their brewing now is done a little bit further down the road in a big new industrial brewery. They did joke that people always tend to end up there on the tour. Actually, on our day, but there was 30 of us or so there. Everybody bar two blokes have managed to get to the right place, hadn't they, to the old refectory. And we'll come back to that in a minute. And so there was some beer tasting as well, which I guess stretched it a little bit, but I think we probably ended up with 3 beers, didn't we? And then a pint as well, a pint of Faith. So not bad. I think it was 20 odd quid, so it wasn't bad value.
Even though it's off the beaten track. No, but even though it's off the beaten track, that little particular area of the Leeds, you can have a cracking little mini crawl, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because obviously there's the Tetley now, which is iconic. I haven't been in there since Kirkstall Brewery took it over. The Grove that we've spoken about before, which you were interested in, we managed to get there. There's what was the original Leeds Brewery, one of their main pubs, the Midnight Bell. That's still there.
Yeah.
And then you're not too far from the Adelphi. Now, I've got issues with the Adelphi, but it still promotes itself as a real ale pub. And it's probably one of the best examples of a Victorian gin palace still remaining in Leeds unaltered. Yeah. So within a 15-minute walk around where Northern Monk's brewery is, even though, it's in an industrial wasteland, you could have a nice little crawl around there without having to put up with the complete crazy situation that was going on in the city centre, which we found out later, Mike, when we tried to get to pub. There's no chance of it.
Yeah, it was pretty ram, wasn't it? So, as Nick said, we got there fairly early on a Saturday lunchtime. So we got dropped off. And, Nick and Bruce have talked about... I think I probably have been the Grove, but it was a long, long time ago. So we made a little bit of a pilgrimage, as we were talking about Faith, to the Grove, which is a little icon, a little bit like Manchester's Peak of the Peveril the Peak, and Britain's Protectorate. It's one of these little, 18th century boozers surrounded by huge megalith, glass and whatever buildings towering above them, and this little quaint pub with open fires and leather seated seats is still there. So it was obviously very quiet, wasn't it, Nick? I mean, there's about 4 or 5 people in there early on a Saturday lunchtime, but nice welcome. Again, what I think was good was the beer off? Oh no, the beer was off in the other place, wasn't he? But the guy, the good choice of beer. We were probably having the first ones out the pump, but they were served really well.
But the first thing he did was pull almost a full pint off.
That's right.
From the pumps that we selected. He didn't pull us a pint straight out, thinking, I'm not going to waste three quarters of a pint. It was a fairly young guy behind the bar.
Yeah.
But obviously, he'd been told by the landlord, that's what we do. You clear the pipes from the night before, and then you serve me fresh beer. So that was good. I mean, the Grove is famous for the music scene as well. I know you wandered through the back, Mike. That back room there.
The concert
many
room.
now famous international artists have cut their teeth there. In fact, I believe Dire Straits actually formed in the Grove, and a lot of other individual singers and groups as well. When they were first making their way in the music industry, the Grove was the place, and they went and performed there. Leeds being quite a big city anyway, it's always been a music venue, and I think it still has got a community vibe to it as well. So it's certainly worth looking out.
So it's a classic old boozer. It's a corridor kind of bar with a very nice spa on the left, and then little rooms on the right and at the rear. That front bar looked really, really nice, and we actually went into the little front snug, which was it was a kind of I don't know, there's a bit of sunlight coming through there. It's got the lovely John Smith's Magna Ale sign that run alongside the outside of the bar. So definitely worth a little trip. And a little tip for you in a minute: if you're coming into the railway station in Leeds and you've got £3 in your pocket, you can get a bit of a shortcut by jumping on the yellow water taxi, which will take you down to not far from the Grove, not quite to the Grove door, but within probably 10 minutes walk, which we'll come back to. So the Grove is probably about 5 minutes walks from the old Flagstore, which is the kind of the tap and the original brewery of Northern Monk. Northern Monk, again, was very much about a community kind of spirit, working together. Although again, they did kind of be honest and say that all the supermarket beers made down the road. They did say to look out for, if you look for OFS on any Northern Monk beer, that will tell you it's been brewed here and not in the mega brewery down the road, which churns out all the supermarket stuff. So maybe that's worth, if you're in the supermarket and they've got some specials on, look for the OFS. And again, they did say that they are keg front. They do some cask, not very much, and they mainly do keg. And certainly in the brewery, Nick, they were mainly kegs, weren't they? You couldn't see many cask barrels around. They do a line, and they did have. I think they had at least one of their casks on, didn't they, upstairs in the tap room. Tap room is really nice. It's probably a little bit more upmarket than your average tap. So whilst it's still got that industrial feel, it isn't all scaffolding poles and and whatever. So it was quite nicely done. Quite a nice bar, some nice long tables. It is a true brewery in that the milling machine is in the bar because that's on the top floor until they used gravity like in the good old days. So they feed all the grains in on the top floor into the grinder, and then it drops down into brewery, which is on the ground floor. So we got there a bit early, so we could have had our free beer then, but we decided not. So I think we took the chance, Nick, to have a couple of different beers, didn't we? Which were all right. There was about 12.
Well, we started with the cask ones because that's the other thing. A lot of them were quite high ABV.
ABV,
and
yeah.
To say it was 12 o'clock or by that time 12 on a Saturday, we didn't want to go too high too soon, did we?
Yeah. And again, they weren't cheap either, and as always, but you can buy thirds, halves, 2/3, and pints. So I think we start on 2/3, but anyway, we had a couple of early beers, and then you get shouted at to go downstairs. So we with a couple of beers. So you go to the bar, you pick up 2 beers, and then you take those downstairs with you, and that's part of the kind of discussion and the tour. It's not the biggest brewery in the world. If you're on the YouTube, you can pretty much see that's it on the left-hand side. That's kind of what they use. That's the brew kit that came in about 2014. So they tend to do the specials in here. They tend to do kind of the smaller runs of beers, festival beers, etc. in here. There were a few things that kind of alarmed me and Nick a little bit, in terms of there were things like microwaves down here, dripping pipes, and
I don't think there was much going on in there, Mike.
Well, there was no
there was nothing in any.
No, there was no beer.
There was nothing in those vessels.
No, there wasn't. There was no beer in any of these vessels, and there were some casks and stuff. And in fact, most of the room on the other side was taken up by a lady doing floristry, who's preparing for a wedding, which they were hosting the day after, I think, which was interesting.
Or a 70th birthday or something, yeah.
The young bar manager did the brewery talk. I thought it was quite good. To be honest,
it was good. Definitely, yeah.
Most of the people who were there were not beery. He asked questions, so we didn't. I mean, we probably came across a little bit of beery nerds, but in a way, I quite like that because I've been to other brewery tours where you do get beer nerds, and they're asking about original gravity and what temperature, and I thought it was a good balance. He explained the brewing process. He was happy to take questions. He talked to people, asked about the flavors that they use. He did talk about their mad beers, like as Nick mentioned, the roly poly and the Seabrooks
custard,
the Seabrooks prawn cocktail lager and cheese and onion
and Mrs. Miggins Yorkshire pudding, and
and he did say they're a bit of a laugh. That's as Nick mentioned, that's their joie de vivre. They like they like to have a bit of fun. They do quite a lot of what's collab beers now. They quite like doing that. It brings in different styles. So I think all in all, it's definitely worth it if you've got somebody in your life that enjoy beer. I think for 25 quid and a trip to Leeds, definitely recommend it. I probably wouldn't go at the end of November, early December, because Leeds was absolutely rammed. I'm not quite sure it's rammed like that all the year round, but the pubs that we tried to
it is, Mike. It's
pretty rammed.
Go midweek if you can. Yeah.
So unfortunately, they'll do the tours on Saturdays. But there we go. So I did mention, if you are in this bit of Leeds, there is some lovely architecture. Some of it is being kind of changed now. So the Leeds is tallest building is just around the corner from the old Flax store, which has some interesting wind lanes or whatever they're called, because apparently the wind kind of howls round, so they have to deflect the wind. And as Nick said, there's actually some really good pubs just around the corner here. So we actually walked past the Cross Keys, which is probably the closest pub to the old refectory, which again gets a fantastic write-up actually. And we did kind of about going in there. We did have a quick peek in the door. We couldn't quite see what was on the taps, but as I say, it looked a really good pub. I did do a little bit of background. It's been a pub since 1802, originally serving the local foundry workers. A lot of again interesting people like James Watt and people rented rooms here in the kind of heyday of Leeds. North Bar took it over in 2005, and inside it is warm and full of character. So definitely worth a look in. We actually went a little bit further down that road and we called into the Midnight Bell, which again is a pub that I've not been in before. The foundry apparently was a bell foundry behind this, and this building again is quite old and has had quite a nice inside, isn't it? It's quite a modern inside. It feels quite modern, but it's not. It's in quite an old building. Lovely little courtyard out the back. It's a bit cold for us today.
Like cracking on a nice day. It's a big area out back with big benches, big seats, big tables.
Yeah.
Certainly in
nice
summer
fire.
when the weather's nice.
Yeah, nice fire. They'd already got the Christmas decos up. It was fairly. It wasn't
The Yorkshire stone floors.
Yeah, it was ticking over. They had an entering range of beers on the bar.
So this was Leeds Brewery's flagship Brewery. When they were on their uppers. When they were flying. The two lads from university who started Leeds Brewery and went phenomenally successful. I think they invested in this one. This was their flagship.
I can't remember what you went in it. I went for the Long Shadow from Roosters, and unfortunately, it was.
And then we just have some cheeky halves, though, didn't we? I think I had a dark one.
I went for a vinegary. I picked the vinegary one. Give her a due.
Yeah.
She did say, you're right, because I wasn't sure. So I give it to Nick, and he said straight away, no, it's gone. And I did go back to her.
Well, out of the Midnight Bell
about it.
I was drinking Leeds Brewery Midnight Bell.
Their house, yeah. As you can see, there, if you're on YouTube, they also had Cameron Strongarm on, which again you don't see that regularly these days. And they had a couple of Leeds. I think I ended up on Leeds Blonde, which was very nice. So that was great. So I mentioned the little yellow taxi. So it's one of the little hidden things about Leeds. Leeds does actually have a water taxi service that runs from Granary Wharf up to Leeds Dock. So basically, it goes from just about underneath the station to the Armouries, Nick, isn't it? It kind of drops you off in that new bit there. And actually, these are Amsterdam boats, which apparently brought over on the ferry, which they've been going for about a few years, haven't they? They were pre-COVID, weren't they? But it's one of those little things that anybody knows anything about it. They run 10 till 6 every day. And certainly if you wanted a little bit of a tour, apparently you get a really good, the guys apparently really interesting, and I've just looked on TripAdvisor and they give a really interesting talk about it. So definitely worth a look, because that would take you virtually to where the area of Leeds where those pubs are. You'd have to cross over the Aire and Calder navigation, isn't it? I think that bit of water there, or I don't know if it's the River Aire at that point. Which again is probably an unknown feature of, not an unknown, an unseen feature of Leeds, isn't it? The Aire, the River Aire that runs through it, which is interesting. And then we failed to get in any of our normal little pubs. And in fact, just going back to the start,
we went down Whitelock's corridor, which we knew that was going to be rammed. And what a lot of people don't realise is that connected to Whitelock's, you've got then a separate pub that's called the Turk's Head.
Turk's Head,
And that, because that's set even further back down that corridor, people think there's only Whitelock's down there. So we carried on to the Turk's Head, and in fact, that was equally as busy. So we ended up walking out at the far side, and then decided, no, kick it in the touch, get back home, and
so we went there. Now, just again, I didn't know this, but some of you may know that Leeds are sometimes referred to as Loiners, or certainly the rugby league club are known as the Loiners. And there's a bit of a debate about where that name comes from, the Leeds. It doesn't kind of fit. And one is that Loindis was its Anglo-Saxon Roman name, but actually what they reckon is it's and Leeds is quite famous for its beer alleys. So down Brigate there are 2 or 3 pubs down these little alleys that you really have to know where they are. So Whitelocks is probably the most famous. Nick's mentioned the Turk's Head. There's also the Ship, which is a similar one, and there's another one. Is it the Royal Oak? So a little bit lower down as well. And they reckon that
Dolphin or the Angel or something.
Dolphin. The Loins was the name for lanes in the kind of Leeds dialect, and that's why again Laners is kind of what it is. So anyway, that's very interesting. Anyway, we went back to our normal halt then. So we got back in the car and we went back to Malton. and we decided that we'd finish the day off with a trip to one of Nick's regulars, which is the Old Malton Royal Oak and Kitchen. With Steve, the landlord, who always has now, Nick. I think he said he has a good selection of beers on. I think he tends to have one on all the time now, doesn't he? And then he always kind of has a dark and a lighter beer on.
His house beer now is brewed by Yorkshire Heart, and that's like £3.40 a pint, which is cracking price. That's a pale ale, and then he always has three other cask beers on, predominantly Yorkshire. He does sometimes pull out a rabbit in the hat from somewhere else in the country, but he tends to have the OP now. He's got his own wooden barrel, his own branded, named Old Malton Royal Oak wooden barrel, that every time he empties it, it gets it refilled. So Thigson's Old Peculiar tends to be on there sort of permanently. So once again, anybody coming into the area who wants to try this infamous, famous beer that anybody who's into drinking real ale will know about for many, 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 many years, then you won't go wrong to try a pint of Thigson's Old P in the Old Malton Royal Oak. And then either side, as I say, he normally has two of the casks from other places. He's also got, are you going to mention this, Mike?
We had our normal
rejuvenation of Double Diamond
we had our normal thirds, didn't we, start with? Because we always, the good thing about Steve, again, he's very happy to serve you 3/3 on a paddle. So I think we started off with that, and we had our dark, middle, and light beers. And then Nicholas did say, yes, they've also got Double Diamond on. So we also ended up, in fact, I don't know when I put the photo, because I was going to put it on it, but I haven't put it on there, as a picture of us both drinking some Double Diamond for the first time, probably in about 40 years, probably, since drinking Double Diamond. But that's another, isn't it? So Double Diamond, now this is where it gets a little bit confusing. Double Diamond technically is owned and now brewed by Allsops, who have recently relaunched themselves with the Red Hand. However, it's not currently brewed by Allsops.
It's not brewed by Allsops.
It's brewed by Kirkstall Brewery.
It's brewed Kirkstall Brewery, yeah.
You
can tell it's Kirkstall beer.
Yeah. And it was quite nice, wasn't it?
I think it's the grandson of the Allsops family.
Yeah.
Decided to buy it back off whoever had taken it on board.
Carlsberg.
To take it back, Carlsberg, take it back into independent ownership. And because he didn't have the facility to actually brew the beer, he gave the contract to Kirkstall. You can tell it's a Kirkstall beer. Steve had said to me, or a lad I worked with said, they'd had a bit when it first went in there. Some old bloke came in and said, oh, yeah, that tastes exactly like Double Dime used to do. And another bloke turned around and says, you're talking a lot of bollocks, it tastes nothing like. I tasted it and said, if Camera was formed and created because they didn't like the taste of Double Diamond and Watney's Red Barrel, I don't think they would have tasted like this. I says, because this is acceptable. All right, it's a keg beer, but as I say, it's certainly got a Kirkstall twang to it. And I said, I can't see why Camera would have been formed if their woody was, this is what was being served 40 odd years ago. So, yeah.
I mean, I think at the time, it was trying to bridge that gap between traditional bitters and the new lagers. So it was a kind of a British, I guess it was almost a British lager. It was a sparkling pale ale. But it's interesting. Do you know why it kind of, so whilst Carlsberg did buy it out, and I don't know whether it was I think it was Indy Cooper who were brewing it in Tadcott at the time. They bought it out, and they actually stopped production in 2003. But they kept brewing a small amount. And do you know the reason why they kept brewing a small amount?
Well, it's to go in bottles for the international market, I assume, was it?
Well, there was somebody else who had a bottle of it. Apparently, every night he had a bottle of it. And that was the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. Apparently, I think from his days in the military, apparently it was one of the military beers that was a standard beer in the Navy. So apparently it
was refreshing. Yeah.
So every day
it was fizzing. It didn't taste of anything.
Yeah. So every night, apparently, he had a bottle of Double Dime. That was his request every night, and therefore they carried on brewing a small batch just so they could, like Nick says, send it abroad, but actually also send cases down to Buckingham Palace. So the good old Duke of Edinburgh keeps beers alive. So I think on a summer's night, I probably would have another pint of that again, if you could. But there we go. So
definitely, I mean, it stands alongside on the tea bar, alongside things like Shipyard Pale Ale and Brewdog and all that sort of stuff. I'd rather give it back to an independent, fair play to the grandson of the Allsop family, wanting to keep the name going. And Kirkstall Brewery got no problem with Kirkstall Brewery, so I'd be quite happy to have a couple of pints of it if there's no decent cask available.
So that is probably going to be until I would think Christmas time, because trying to nail Bruce down at the moment is nigh on impossible. There is some talk of us potentially maybe getting together just before Christmas, although Bruce is, again, as always, harebrained schemes about going to London, which I definitely can't do, and possibly Calderdale. But again, the way the train's out at the moment, I'm not sure I'd want to be stuck in Rochdale on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock without any trains home. Nick is coming down to Staffordshire for the Christmas celebration, so we will certainly report back on a little soiree that we'll have down here. I'm still waiting, Nick. They haven't.
Bruce and I are having a trip to London.
Oh yeah, oh you go right, very good. What day? When you going there?
Is already earmarked 3 Guinness Irish 4 pubs. And I'm saying, lovely. No chance, Bruce.
Right.
I'm not going to bloody London to drink bloody Guinness in 4 Irish bars.
I'm waiting on the Titanic. I think they've released some of their kegs, because I normally try and go and buy a keg of Grand Reserve. But at the moment, there's not any available. They've just done the bottle. The bottles have just come out. But I'm just waiting on the Grand Cru port infused and use my credit that I've saved. Although I must say I haven't been as much this year, because my Titanic credit it won't pay for the barrel, put it that way. But we'll see how that goes. And then we are planning a return visit to Keswick over New Year. So we did a little episode on Keswick last year. I think it was this year, last year, wasn't it? Because we've been there we went for Christmas last year. So as Nick was saying early just before we started, Keswick is not a bad place to head to, because there's a pub literally every 10 yards in Keswick. And whilst we
another brewery open, I think, Mike.
Yeah,
another brewery. Should be another brewery tap.
Whilst we did most of them last time, we actually didn't do all of them. So I will like to go into like the Robinsons ones that we didn't go into last time and just test them out. And there's a couple of other pubs on the Central Dragon that we didn't get into last time. So and we know we've got the Keswick Brewery is a great tap that we really enjoyed in there. And
a lot of good. Breweries in Cumbria now around the lakes.
Yeah, buzzing.
They seem to be increasing. Yeah. Be interested to see if we can get a pint of Jennings, because obviously that's gone independent now again. Brewing back in Cockermouth. A couple have taken that on, and from being the lakes 2 weeks ago, I will say that all the bars that I went in were very loyal to making sure they had at least one, if not two, 3 Lakeland breweries on the bar as well. So they are patriotic. They are very, very loyal to the breweries around there. So looking forward to it.
Nick's off to Rotterdam for 48 hours this weekend, so I don't know whether there'll be any beery highlights back from that. I'm busy brass banding around the various places in thing. Although I think we've done our night. Oh no, we're at the Paper Mill next week, so that's a kind of hungry horsey pub. We were at the Jowls Glebe on Sunday, which was quite a nice little gig actually, especially because there was too many of us, so some of us had to volunteer to sit out for a bit and have a drink. So me and my fellow bass player Kevin, we volunteered for the first thing, so we we tried some slumbering monk and some blonde, it was on good form. It was very nice. And
they're like the memorabilia, don't the Jowls?
Oh yeah. And
the brewery mirrors and trays and.
We've got 2 gigs on Sunday, so that'll be quite. We'll probably end up in the Greyhound in Penkhull, which is one of the oldest pubs in certainly this bit of the Midlands. And then before we know it'll be Christmas. So we will try and squeeze maybe a little Chris Crimbley catch up maybe once these two have been to London and see what treats and what food Bruce managed to devour, and at what time he stopped drinking beer, probably the second pint, and went on to Coca-Cola in all the Irish pubs that he's dragged Nicholas into. For a pint of warm bitter rather than stout. So
I'll go my own way. I've told him a Sam Smith's pub, a Fuller's pub, a pub of significant historical interest, an Irish pub, and I would think after 4 pubs that'll be enough for him anyway. So.
I think I might have a weekend off this weekend. I think I need to get in my garage as well and just have a little bit of a pre-sort before in the cellar, because I did notice there's some very obscure bottles and things that probably need drinking now. I think there's a couple of
Some
COVID.
vintage
I
brews.
think there's a couple of COVIDs. There's definitely a couple of Christmas beers and strong beers from last year that are probably nicely matured. I mentioning Asda are doing 10 cans of tribute for a tenner today, so I've got some of those in. I've got a few the nicer lagers, shall we say, that are brewed in the right country. I've got some of those in. I've got some Guinness in, which Nicholas bought one. I've got some Murphys, which I might
What you
tempt
mean,
you
not Tadcaster?
yeah, I might tempt you with the Murphys because there's quite nice cans of Murphys. Actually, I've quite seen them quite a lot in Two Mac at the moment. I don't know whether they're having a bit of a resurgence, but that's quite nice. And then got some alcohol frees, and then yeah, so we'll. I've got my bottle of very strong Wine Society gin for you today.
Tell
so
your
I'll keep it
other
going.
half that the Marks and Spencer's chocolate stout's very nice.
And
Last time I came back from London, in fact,
yeah,
I had to have one of those to keep me sane on the train journey back home, and yeah, very nice.
I've got
That
some
chocolate. I don't know who
cherry
brews it.
beers. That cherry beer is very nice as well. I've got some of that in the fridge as well. That's really nice.
Yeah, and that's a
Cherry
good thing
beer.
with Marks and Spencer. They actually tell you where who's
Which
brewing it
yeah,
for them
who
as
brews
well.
it? Yeah.
You can see which brew these are. Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so we'll thank Bruce for joining us. Not tonight. We've probably got through that without too many arguments. And I say we will hopefully catch up with you either just before or after the Christmas period. So to all our wonderful listeners, I would have gone through our America is back on our top chart of listeners for the last month. And we've slightly curtailed our international status. A few more in the UK listening, so I'll perhaps pick that up next time. So yes, Nicholas, all the best, and I will see you in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully. And chin chin.
So there.
Go and see if Santa's still outside.
No, he's gone now. He's gone for a pint.